Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions, and at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, President Officer. Scotland should be able to build ferries here in Scotland to serve the islands of Scotland, to carry the people of Scotland. So why will 7 new CalMac vessels instead be built in Poland?
First Minister.
For the simple reason that there has been a competitive tendering process undertaken to make sure that we can deliver 7 new vessels for some of the smaller routes that are part of the CalMac network, and that process has been undertaken involving companies in Scotland and in other countries consistent with the terms of the procurement legislation that the Government must follow.
Russell Finlay.
These vessels could and indeed should have been built here in Scotland. Ferguson Marine could and should be fit to win these contracts, because for decades before the SNP had anything to do with it, Ferguson built ferries on budget and on time. But now, under the direct control of John Swinney's government, they're unable to compete. So will he tell us, frankly, who is responsible for that?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government intervened when there was a risk that Ferguson's would cease trading on the Clyde, and we arranged for new ownership to take forward the future of the yard. The Government has subsequently taken decisions which have led to significant orders being placed with Ferguson's through a due competitive process in the past, and we have just concluded, we are in the process of concluding the small vessel replacement programme, which is in the 10-day standstill period. So there is little detail I can give to Parliament on that process. But the Government, of course, has supported the work at Ferguson's, most recently with an additional investment of up to £14.2 million in the yard to ensure that we are able to support the yard to guarantee its long-term future.
Russell Finlay.
2 ferries with a £97 million price tag will end up costing taxpayers more than £400 million. And
let's hear Mr Finlay.
Service at least 7 years late. And this all began with the contract John Swinney personally approved 10 years ago. It was rushed through for one purpose, and that was to promote the interests of the SNP, not the interests of islanders or taxpayers. And the evidence shows that the entire process was rigged and the rules were repeatedly broken. There was not even a bog-standard financial guarantee to protect taxpayers. John Swinney personally signed off on a process that was not just flawed but corrupt. And after 10 years, Ferguson's are still dealing with the fallout. So does John Swinney accept that his actions a decade ago are causing Scottish shipyards to lose contracts to Eastern Europe today?
First Minister.
No, I don't in any way, shape or form. If the Government had not intervened when I took actions in the past, when the yard faced difficulties, there would be employees who would not have had a livelihood for the best part of a decade. Now, I know that doesn't much concern Russell Finlay, because he represents a party that has destroyed the industrial base of Scotland under the awful leadership of the Conservative governments in the United Kingdom. And what this government is about working with the workforce to make sure that we can secure the future of the yard. Now, at the heart of Russell Finlay's question is a complete contradiction, because on the one hand, he's accused the Government of rigging a process in the past, and now...
Let's hear the First Minister, and for those who feel compelled to comment from their seats, I would ask them if they are content that they are adhering to the requirements that they should be adhering to regards their behaviour.
So, on one occasion, the Government is being accused of rigging the process, and now the Government is being accused of not rigging the process to make sure the vessels can go to Ferguson's. I think this just demonstrates that Russell Finlay is scraping the bottom of the barrel of political insults. He does it week on week in this Parliament, and it's a disgrace to the Conservative Party.
Russell Finlay.
No. Sorry, John. We don't want the SNP to fix contracts.
Mr. Finlay, I'm sure, Mr. Finlay, that you know we do not use simply first names in this chamber.
Forgive me. Sorry, First Minister. We don't want the SNP to fix contracts for Ferguson's. We want them to fix Ferguson's so that they can win contracts fairly and squarely. Because Scottish shipyards should be able to build ferries here in Scotland. After nationalisation, the SNP had a duty to get Ferguson's back into a position to win contracts legitimately, and they have failed to do so. Yes. SNP politicians want all the credits when they're grabbing headlines and launching a ferry with painted-on windows, but they never, ever accept responsibility for what's gone wrong. And the First Minister's fingerprints are all over this scandal from the very beginning. He signed off on a dodgy deal that's let down islanders, taxpayers and shipyard workers who face an uncertain future. Correct. Scotland was once world-leading in shipbuilding, and now we're losing CalMac ferry contracts to Poland. So how can anyone trust John Swinney to repair the damage at Ferguson's when he caused it in the first place?
First Minister.
So there would not be a Ferguson's Yard trading just now if I had not intervened over 10 years ago to try to secure the future of the yard, and I make no apology for doing that over all those years. Now, I want to tell Parliament what Russell Finlay really thinks, because he's not been straight with Parliament about all his questions today. This is what Russell Finlay said before. He called Ferguson Marine a terrible drain on the public finances. He called my government's support recklessly throwing taxpayers' money away. He also, I'm not finished. I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished yet. I've got lots more to share with Parliament today. He said that the non-stop squandering of cash cannot go on. So what we know today is that Russell Finlay has specialised in talking down the yard at Ferguson's. We know that he's come here today to just demonstrate the political opportunism that we hear from him every single week. And we know why he's doing it. We know why he's doing it, because the Conservative Party are being hammered by reform, and Russell Finlay is on his way out with most of his colleagues with him. Thank goodness, and good riddance to the lot of them.
Question number 2. Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, Scotland is a country renowned worldwide for its reputation for shipbuilding. For generations, we've been a leader in engineering, manufacturing and craftsmanship. So why does John Swinney think Scotland isn't capable of building his own ferries?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I think Scotland is able to take forward its shipbuilding activities, and we have many examples of that being the case. And the Government has intervened using our economic development powers and interventions to support that over a number of years. Because if it hadn't been for the actions of this Government and the actions that I took as a Minister in the past, there would be no constancy of work at Ferguson's Marine, and I make no apology for putting it in that direction.
Anna Sarwar.
With the SNP, it's contracts going abroad. This week, it's jobs for Poland. 4 years ago, it was jobs for Turkey. So much for Stronger for Scotland. It's the SNP Stronger for Poland, the SNP Stronger for Turkey. I want the ferries to be built here in Scotland. I want
Let's hear Mr. Sarwar.
I want the jobs. I want the ferries to be built here in Scotland. I want the investment to be here in Scotland. I want the jobs to be here in Scotland. We have world-leading shipbuilders at Port Glasgow, Govan and Rosyth. We have a publicly owned shipbuilding company, Ferguson's, we have BAE and we have Babcock. I want Scotland's shipbuilders to be able to bid and win these contracts, but John Swinney believes none of them are good enough to build Scotland's ferries. So what is it about the way SNP run Ferguson's, and what is it about the way the SNP do procurement that means Scotland's ferries can't be built in Scotland?
First Minister.
I don't believe any of the guff that Mr Sarwar suggested is any of my views. Absolutely.
First Minister. Let's ensure our language is courteous and respectful.
Well, let me rephrase my question. I don't believe any of the nonsense that Mr Sarwar purported to be my view. We've gone through a competitive tendering process in which Ferguson Marine have been part of that competitive tendering process. So it follows from that I believe that yard is perfectly able to build the ships because they're part of the tendering process and they got through that tendering process to put in a bid that was credible and to be considered. But what ministers cannot do is that ministers cannot operate outside the law. We've got to follow. Well,
Mr. Mara.
We've got to follow the procurement law that is in place. We've got to follow the legislation as part of the United Kingdom Subsidy Control Act, which is an obligation on all of us to make sure that ferry tenders are determined on the basis of an open procurement process. So, whilst I would love the vessels to be built at Ferguson Marine, of course I would love that because that's why we're putting in £14.2 million over 2 years to support Ferguson Marine develop their capability. I want that to be the case, but I've got to make sure that we procure our ferry vessels in accordance with the legislation that's in place in the United Kingdom.
Anna Sarwar.
John Swinney sends investment and jobs to Turkey. He sends investment and jobs to Poland, and people in Scotland will think it's nonsense that he's not building ferries here in Scotland. And the consequence of SNP incompetence is stark, because it's not just investment and jobs going abroad. At the heart of this are island communities that have been failed. Islanders missing out on hospital appointments. They've missed weddings. They've missed loved ones' funerals, and their livelihoods are being destroyed. The Fraser of Islander Institute estimates that disrupted ferry services cost the Isle of Arran alone up to £170,000 a day in lost revenue. That's devastating for an island. And in Uist, Stephen Peterana, the managing director of a hotel group which employs 70 people on the island, said, "We as a team have spent over 4 decades building a sustainable business, only to watch CalMac and the Scottish Government shrink it over the last 5 years." So what does John Swinney say to Stephen, his family and his staff, whose livelihoods this SNP government is putting at risk?
First Minister.
Well, what I would say to Mr Perana, who I've met on many occasions and for whom I've got great respect, is that the Scottish Government is investing in the ferry network, and we have commissioned the Glensannox and the Glenrosa from Ferguson's. We have 4 large vessels coming from the Chemri yard in Turkey, and there are 7 small vessels being procured by the Government. Now, when the Government came to office in the 2006-07 expenditure on ferries in Scotland was £90 million. In the forthcoming budget, which Mr Sarwar did not support, it is going to be £530 million. £530 million. A 23% increase in funding levels on last year. So what I would say is...
Let's hear one another.
So what I would say is that the Government is investing in the ferry network. We've procured 6 large vessels to join the network. We've got 7 smaller vessels that will be joining the network over time, and the Government is putting up the money to support that. Now, Mr Sarwar has talked about the Ferguson's yard, and let me just remind Mr Sarwar of what the GMB wrote to Mr Sarwar in 2022. What Mr Sarwar was told by the GMB is that the Labour Party's approach to the situation at Ferguson's is so disappointing. That's what the GMB told Mr Sarwar. Why? Because Mr Sarwar and his colleagues who are repeatedly shouting at me today have done what the Tories have done for years. They've run down Ferguson's while this government has supported Ferguson's, and I'm making no apology for that today.
Question number 3, Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister when the Cabinet will next meet.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Cabinet will next meet on Monday in Kirkintilloch, where we will have the opportunity to meet local businesses, service providers and community groups, as well as hearing directly from local community members themselves.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, since the launch of the Netflix drama Adolescence, everyone is talking about the challenges that young people face. Violence in schools, the rise of toxic misogynists like Andrew Tate, and online bullying. And this isn't just drama, it's happening here and now in Scotland too. Last summer, the Scottish Government published a new action plan. It aimed to make pupils and staff feel safe and supported. However, my party is publishing new research today that shows there have been over 24,000 violent incidents reported in our schools in the months since the plan was revealed. Incident for incident, it's matching the trajectory of the record-breaking 40,000 reports of school violence recorded last year. Pupils shouldn't be going to school afraid. Teachers deserve to know that this government has their back. So does the First Minister think that pupils and staff feel any safer or more supported? And what further practical actions will his government take to combat violence in our schools? First Minister.
So first of all, let me agree with Mr Cole-Hamilton about the impact of the drama Adolescence, because it is leading to some significant debate in our society, which I think is absolutely necessary, about the unacceptable behaviour of some supposed influencers and who are influencing very poor behaviour amongst particularly young men in our society today. And I read with care some reflections from the Dimbleby lecture by Gareth Southgate, which I thought were significant contributions to the debate, which I again reinforce, which I have done so on a number of occasions as First Minister, about the importance of exercising the leadership that I need to exercise to improve the culture and the behaviour of men and boys in our society today. In relation to the question of violence in our schools, Mr Cole-Hamilton correctly indicates that the Government has worked with our local authority partners on taking forward the Behaviour in Schools Action Plan, and there are a range of actions within that plan which are designed to improve the situation, which I think Mr Cole-Hamilton and I would probably accept has been influenced by the aftermath of COVID and also the unacceptable examples of leadership that I've just highlighted. But I am always open to wider consideration about how we can support school staff, how we can ensure that schools are a safe place for young people in which to be educated, because they must be a safe place for young people to be educated. In some circumstances, school may well be the only safe place that a young person is experiencing. So I'm very open to dialogue with Mr Cole-Hamilton on how we can take further practical measures beyond what the Government has already announced to make sure that we support our schools in this important work.
Question number 4, Michelle Thompson.
To ask the First Minister what assessment the Scottish Government has made of the recent UK Living Standards Review 2025 from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, and any implications for its work to grow the Scottish economy.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the report rightly identifies economic problems the UK continues to face. The UK has some of the least generous welfare across the OECD, its regional income growth is some of the slowest in Europe, and its weak productivity growth is costing workers thousands per year. These results come directly from the welfare and economic choices of the current and previous United Kingdom Government, including not removing the two-child limit on universal credit, which this report finds is the most cost-effective way to reduce poverty. Despite the hindrances these UK Government decisions place on our ability to grow the Scottish economy and to eradicate child poverty, GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3%, compared to 6% in the United Kingdom since 2007.
Michelle Thompson.
I thank the First Minister for that response and would simply add myself, it noted that the poorest households in Slovenia are now better off than the poorest households in the UK. And of course, low productivity is costing workers in the UK £4,300 every year. And of course, economic growth is the answer. So what further steps in this regard has the First Minister planned? And when will plans be set out to offer Scots the chance to match the superior growth of other medium-sized countries who have proper fiscal powers in the form of independence?
First Minister.
So the Government is taking a number of steps to improve the performance of the Scottish economy, which, of course, as I highlighted in my earlier answer to Michelle Thompson, has actually grown in terms of GDP growth per capita in Scotland at a faster rate in Scotland than in the rest of the United Kingdom. So the interventions of the Scottish Government have helped to improve economic performance, and we are pursuing a positive approach towards investment. On Monday, a number of ministers took part in an investment forum which was enormously successful and well supported by international investors to invest in the Scottish economy, and our dialogue with investors is undertaken on a constant basis. I recognise and support and endorse the point that Michelle Thompson makes, that with a wider range of fiscal powers, the already higher levels of economic growth per person in Scotland than we have been able to deliver under devolution would be enhanced if we had the range of powers that other independent countries take for granted, and I would want to deploy them to deliver growth and prosperity for the people of Scotland.
Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The starkest measure of living standards is life expectancy. And after 18 years of SNP government, Scots still die younger than in the rest of the UK. Why, on John Swinney's watch as Deputy First Minister and now First Minister, has Scottish life expectancy dropped in 5 of the 8 reporting periods since 2014?
In relation to the substantive question, First Minister.
I wonder if Craig Hoy has in any way, in the aftermath of the Conservatives' rejection from office in the summer last year, reflected at all on the damage that has been done to our society by 14 years of austerity under the Conservative government. Is there absolutely no space for self-reflection? That Craig Hoy has been part of a Conservative government that's undermined the public finances, delivered poor economic growth, and they come here and lecture me about a government which has increased GDP per capita in Scotland faster than the rest of the United Kingdom. I think this just demonstrates that Craig Hoy is just playing about with politics.
Let's hear the First Minister.
He's playing about with politics. He's got no constructive solutions to bring forward for Scotland, and he's part of a party that's damaged the well-being of the people of Scotland by austerity.
Question number 5, Rachel Hamilton.
To ask the First Minister how the Scottish Government is marking Endometriosis Awareness Month.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, endometriosis is a chronic and painful condition which can have an enormous impact on the health and well-being of women who are affected. That is why endometriosis is a priority in our Women's Health Plan. March marks Endometriosis Awareness Month, and we are taking action to raise awareness about the condition, its symptoms, and to help women to find information and support. Earlier this month, we lit government buildings yellow in recognition of Endometriosis Awareness Month, and we have produced a social media toolkit to help others raise awareness too. We have also provided educational resources for those working in primary care to improve understanding and to support earlier diagnosis, which I know is a critical issue for those living with the condition.
Rachel Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite the SNP saying that they will bring down waiting times for endometriosis to 12 months, it remains at 8.5 years. And after diagnosis, women with endo face further hell waiting for treatment for this crippling condition. 24-year-old Chloe Bremner was told that she faced a 2-year wait for surgery on NHS Scotland. The pain was so unbearable that Chloe had to go to Abu Dhabi for treatment. Presiding Officer, the Women's Health Plan is not cutting it. It was meant to reduce health inequalities for women and girls, not exacerbate them. What decisive action will the First Minister take to stop women like Chloe paying a fortune for treatment because they can't get proper care in Scotland?
First Minister.
What the government is doing is the government is working with a range of stakeholders to take forward the Women's Health Plan. Secondly, the government is putting in the investment to reduce waiting times to make sure that women like Chloe do not have to wait as long as they are having to wait. And we are making progress in reducing waiting times across a number of different sectors. And thirdly, we are putting in place over £21 billion of investment in the National Health Service to make sure the health service can meet the needs of the public in Scotland. That, of course, is all part of the budget that the government has put forward, and I am glad to see that Parliament has supported.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite endometriosis being the second most common gynaecological condition in the UK, the level of data collection on endometriosis by Health Board is extremely limited. Does the government recognise that capturing more data on GP referrals for endometriosis and waiting times for consultation would create greater transparency around how long it is taking to diagnose and treat endometriosis? First Minister.
I recognise that these are important steps that could be taken to assist the situation, and obviously the emphasis on improving the information that is available to us about individual conditions is part of the approach envisaged in the Women's Health Plan for Scotland. So I'm happy to take away the point that Carol Mockin puts to me to determine the steps that can be taken to improve the flow of data that would assist in the planning of such treatment.
Thank you. Question number 6, Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what action the Scottish Government is taking to tackle Islamophobia in Scotland in light of reports of an attack on a mosque in Aberdeen at the weekend.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I unequivocally condemn the recent attack on the Aberdeen Mosque and Islamic Centre. I recognise the traumatic impact such an incident has on individuals, families and communities. That's why we are taking robust and meaningful action to challenge prejudice like this, tackling hatred and Islamophobia through delivering our hate crime strategy.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the First Minister for that answer. This incident of vandalism has shocked Aberdeen's Muslim community and the city at large. The police have responded positively, and people in Old Aberdeen rallied round to help the mosque congregation with the clean-up. Does the First Minister agree with my view that it is incumbent on governments, on all leaders and on all politicians and in this place and elsewhere to unite to tackle Islamophobia, intolerance and extremist views?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I do agree with those sentiments, and it is for that reason that I have indicated that I will convene a gathering of political and civic leaders to establish the constructive interventions we can all agree to create a cohesive society where everyone feels safe and at home. And I think the example that Mr Stewart puts to Parliament of the steps that have been taken by the community in Old Aberdeen to demonstrate exactly that type of solidarity and that support to the Muslim community in the city of Aberdeen is a splendid example of the type of spirit we need to have in this country, where we are defined by what unites us, not by what divides us.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I raised Islamophobia with the First Minister just 2 weeks ago, and the abhorrent attack on Aberdeen Mosque and Islamic Centre demonstrates Scotland is not immune to hatred. I welcome the First Minister condemning it today. Can he outline what action is being taken to protect mosques during Ramadan, and does he agree that education is a key to combating Islamophobia and hatred of all forms?
First Minister.
I agree with the points put to me by Mr Chowdhury, and what I also would like to reassure Mr Chowdhury about, and also the Muslim community in Scotland, is that I have been constantly encouraged by the approach taken by Police Scotland, who have always sought out dialogue with the Muslim community and at times of anxiety have particularly accentuated that engagement. And I know that during the period of Ramadan and at other times of the year, Police Scotland are actively engaged with the community to make sure the community feels safe. That's what I want the community to feel, and I know that's the view of Parliament, and I know it's the view of Police Scotland as well.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Under this Labour UK government, most pensioners have lost their winter fuel allowance, WASPy women have been cast aside, and now we have an attack on benefits. My question as a pensioner, what impact will changes in the UK benefit personal independence payment have on pensioners making new applications under the Scottish Government's pension age disability payment, the replacement for the UK attendance allowance?
First Minister.
President Officer, I understand the anxiety that Christine Graham puts to Parliament today, and I think we've all been enormously troubled and concerned by the announcements made by the United Kingdom Government, which will significantly undermine the access to disability benefits that will be available to individuals in the United Kingdom. Now, we have to observe with care the process the United Kingdom Government is going through, because that will determine what is the impact principally on the finances that we have available to support the benefits and social security arrangements that are under our control. So I cannot give a definitive answer to Christine Graham today. What I can say to Christine Graham, however, is that this government put legislation to Parliament which meant that the decisions we take on social security must be taken to ensure we operate a system that has dignity and respect at its heart. And the UK Government steps do not have dignity and respect at the heart of their decision-making. They have got austerity at the heart of their decision-making. We were told the election of a Labour government would end austerity, and this week the disabled people and those vulnerable in our society have learnt the hard way that Labour are carrying on the austerity of the Tories.
Finlay Carson.
Presiding Officer, last year the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service dealt with 133 serious wildfire incidents between March and June, including 10 in my own constituency. But despite a small increase in the latest budget, Scotland's National Fire Service has been cut to the bone, with cuts to firefighter numbers, fire engines and stations being brought to their knees, according to the Fire Brigade Union. In light of the climate change impact in rural areas, does the First Minister agree that there needs to be additional resources made available? And can I ask the First Minister what action he is taking regarding the extreme risk wildfire warning issued by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for low-lying areas in Scotland, including South West Scotland, for this coming weekend?
First Minister.
President Officer, I acknowledge the concern there will be about the warning that's been put in place. This is a warning that's in place in March, when I don't think any of us would really ordinarily expect there to be a wildfire warning in Scotland. And I think that's an indication of the serious effects of climate change that we are now experiencing in our society, and that has to be addressed. Of course, the Fire and Rescue Service will work with Forestry and Land Scotland, with NGOs, with landowners and communities to effectively respond to any incidents, and the examples are being monitored by the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. The Fire and Rescue Service does an exceptional job in Scotland. It is being supported by a budget increase of £29.3 million in its budget, and that's a measure of the commitment that the government is putting in place. Indeed, the budget is £79 million higher than it was in 2017-18. Now, I am all for having considered discussions in Parliament about the public finances, but I have to put it to Mr Carson that he has a bit of a brass neck coming here. This is about wildfires, yes, and there wouldn't be any money to tackle them.
Let's hear the First Minister.
If there wasn't a budget passed by Parliament, which the Conservatives voted against, there wouldn't be support in place to tackle wildfires. So listen, I'll just tell the Conservatives, I am not going to tire of pointing out to them their total and utter inadequacy in this Parliament, because they come here asking us to spend more money when they won't actually put the budget provisions in place. The Tories are a disgrace.
I call Neil Bibby.
Many people have been shocked and saddened by BBC Scotland's decision to cancel River City, with nearly 10,000 people signing an equity trade union petition to save the show. This has implications for jobs, opportunities and for viewers. There are serious concerns that plans to replace the show will collectively offer 20 fewer hours of broadcast television to Scottish licence fee payers than the current 33 hours. Does the First Minister share my concerns about this decision, and also the concerns of Jackie Baillie and I about the potential loss of the Dumbarton studio, which is used for many other productions? And ahead of the 2027 Charter renewal, will the Scottish Government seek guarantees that BBC Scotland's budget will be invested in local and TV and film production?
First Minister.
So these are, of course, decisions for BBC Scotland, but I recognise the disappointment there is about the decision not to continue with the River City series. Obviously, the point that underlies Mr Bibby's comments are the importance of there being the production of television material from within Scotland. And it's an issue the Cabinet Secretary for Culture and External Affairs has been discussing with the BBC. He'll discuss the implications of the River City decision with Equity as well, because I certainly want to be clear with Parliament today. The Government attaches the greatest level of importance to ensuring there is production activity undertaken genuinely within Scotland, so the economic benefit of that is felt within Scotland, as the BBC Charter would oblige the BBC to undertake. And the Government will be engaging very strongly to make sure that's the case.
Jackie Dunbar.
The success of Scotland's offshore wind industry is rightly a priority.
Perhaps begin again, Ms Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The success of Scotland's offshore and wind industry is rightly a priority of this Scottish Government, delivering on our climate obligations and unlocking new jobs and significant economic opportunities. Following this week's Global Offshore Wind Investment Forum, can the First Minister provide an update regarding the steps which this SNP Scottish Government has taken to attract investment and support in Scotland's offshore wind industry?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Government is taking a number of steps to support the development of the offshore wind industry. There have been significant investments already landed in Scotland with the commitments at Ardersier, the investments by Sumitomo at Nig, and we're also supporting further developments at Scapa Flow and Montrose. So there is a great deal of investment happening. Can I reassure Jackie Dunbar that the level of investment interest in Scotland, as demonstrated at the Global Offshore Wind Investment Forum on Monday, was very encouraging, and the Government is obviously taking steps to make sure that we align the investment opportunities with sites in Scotland, supported by our enterprise development agencies and also supported by the Scottish National Investment Bank. So I think we have a number of steps coming together that enable us to reap the rewards of the significant natural opportunities that we have.
Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Young Carers v Cancer Research shows that children with cancer wait an average of 6 months for disability benefits here in Scotland, leaving struggling families without support. Will the First Minister remove the 3-month qualifying period for children with clear medical evidence, ensuring financial aid starts at diagnosis, so no child in Scotland faces additional hardship at an already overwhelming time for them and their family?
First Minister.
I'll certainly explore that question, and it's important that those who require support in our society are able to receive that support at the earliest possible opportunity. And we are seeing a reduction in processing times within Social Security Scotland across a range of different social security services that are available, and I will consider the point that Mr Balfour's put to me.
Mark Ruskell.
Thank you. I'm sure the First Minister will be as excited as I am to see the Tour de France come to Scotland in 2027. It will be the first time in the event's 124-year history that it has visited our cycling nation. But can I ask him what lessons were learned on the back of the World Championships in 2023? Because it's really important that the Tour leaves a lasting legacy, particularly for disadvantaged communities, once the peloton has moved on from Scotland.
First Minister.
I do agree with Mr Ruskell in his welcome to the Tour de France announcement that was made last night at Edinburgh Castle. I was delighted to be there to welcome the interest and the commitment of Tour de France for both the Tour de France and the women's race into the bargain, the first time they will have started outside of France in the history of the Tour de France. So it's an absolutely enormous opportunity for Scotland. It's a demonstration of the success and the effectiveness of the country in attracting major international events, and I'm delighted that we've been able to secure that for 2027. I think the principal lesson I would learn is that we've got to put in place the infrastructure and the facilities that enable people to take part in cycling activity, and of course the government's investment in active travel helps and assists in that respect. And we can obviously see the effect of many of those changes around our communities where that infrastructure has now been put in place.
Gordon MacDonald.
The OECD has downgraded its UK growth forecast ahead of the Chancellor's spring statement to 1.4% for 2025. Despite having all the economic levers at its disposal, the UK Labour government is failing to grow the economy in order to hit its 2.5% growth target, and that's before the impact of the employer's national insurance hike. UK government may have changed last year, but under Labour we have more of the same economic failure with stagnant growth and continuing austerity. Can I ask the First Minister how this downgraded forecast impacts his government's priority to grow Scotland's economy?
First Minister.
President Officer, the issues that Mr MacDonald raises are very serious because the effect of the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, I think, will have a negative impact on growth, and indeed there is now speculation that the material that is announced by the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the spring statement will reduce the growth forecasts expected for the United Kingdom, which will inevitably have the effect of reducing tax revenues that are likely to be available for the Chancellor. The implications of that is that there is likely to be further pressure on the Scottish Government's budget in the years to come. So I think what we can expect is what we have seen from the Labour Government in the course of this week, the perpetuation of the austerity agenda that they inherited from the Conservatives, which they promised that they would bring to an end, but they have revitalised as part of the Labour Government. I don't think anyone would have imagined that a Labour Government would come into office and inflict more austerity on the people of Scotland.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, evening bus services through Tullochutree's main bus stands have been suspended from 7 p.m. this week due to antisocial behaviour. McGill's Midland Bluebird have taken the action due to a rise in violent incidents occurring this month. These services are a lifeline for nighttime workers, among others, and this behaviour is completely unacceptable. So what urgent action can be put in place to ensure the safety of bus drivers, passengers and the general public so they are protected from this needless violence?
First Minister.
I recognise the importance of all of our public transport services being operated safely, and that applies to both passengers and to members of staff. Obviously, these incidents are totally unacceptable, and Police Scotland will be taking active steps to ensure that the community is kept safe and that there is every opportunity for bus services and public transport services to operate in the way that members of the public can reasonably expect them to operate.
And Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, my First Minister will be very much aware of my thoughts and my disappointment that Ferguson Meridian didn't win the order that was announced on Monday. But I do welcome the fact there's a new Chief Executive coming into the yard. But will the First Minister guarantee and ensure that the Scottish Government will have a thorough and robust discussion and debrief with the management and the board of Ferguson Marine, so that the yard can actually become a competitive yard and it can win future orders, both from the public sector and also in the commercial market.
First Minister.
President Officer, I'm very pleased to welcome the appointment of Graham Thompson as the new Chief Executive of Ferguson Marine, and he will take up that post on the 1st of May. The Government is taking forward all of the steps that Mr Macmillan has put to me about making sure that we strengthen the yard. The yard has been part of a competitive tendering process, and within that it has put forward a credible bid which indicates the strength of the yard, but the Government of course is supporting that with a further £14.2 million of investment to strengthen the yard, and is also working with the yard to ensure that it is able to command further work to support its future, and that will remain the priority of the Government in the forthcoming period.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a members' business debate in the name of Michael Matheson, and there will now be a suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and gallery to do so.